Brother Hugh, I appreciate you being with me today.
It's great to be here.
And have just a few questions I'd love to ask you and get your opinion on, get your thoughts. And I'd like to just start out with some of the early preachers who have influenced you early in life, and then as you went through all of your work as a gospel preacher.
The first gospel preacher I ever heard was an older preacher by the name of W.T. Grider, William Tipton Grider, and he was known as Tip Grider. Brother Grider lived in the little town of Rose Hill in South Alabama. He never preached full time for any congregation. He was a farmer and a businessman of some type. I do not recall the business that he was in, but it involved sales work. He also preached, and he preached by appointments and in gospel meetings. He conducted a number of meetings in the panhandle of Florida, where I grew up. I was born in extreme South Alabama, about 12 miles from the Florida line. Spent my early boyhood days in the panhandle of Florida. And my father was not a member of the church. He was a nominal Methodist. My mother was a member of the church, but not faithful. But we attended meetings that Brother Grider conducted, and he put my dad to thinking. And my daddy would go home after hearing Brother Grider, and he would read his Bible for the purpose of proving Brother Grider wrong, and the more he read, the more he realized he was right. I remember Brother Grider was a very dignified man, and I remember him because he was the first true New Testament preacher that I ever heard. He did not influence me in the way of how I preach or anything like that, but he stands out in my memory because of the influence that he had on my dad. As I said, he did not baptize my dad, but he put my dad on the road to thinking. And that leads then to the second preacher who did have a fairly strong influence on me, Paul Simon. Brother Simon preached for a number of congregations full-time in the panhandle of Florida, Pensacola, Panama City, Chipley, maybe some other places through that part of the country. And he came to our hometown in the about 1946 or 47 and preached in some tent meetings. And in the second or third one that he preached in, my parents attended, and my dad made up his mind to obey the gospel. And he was baptized by Paul Simon, and Brother Simon became a mentor, if you please, to our family. I was impressed with his preaching. He had a tremendous memory, a tremendous recall. He could quote scripture after scripture with no hesitation. I remember hearing him at least 2 and perhaps 3 times preach the Sermon on the Mount without any comment from himself. He quoted the entire 3 chapters of Matthew 5, 6, and 7 by memory. He later influenced us to move to Florence, Alabama, where I finished my last 2 years of high school at Mars Hill Bible School, because he was serving as the president of Mars Hill at that time. And he knew that I had the desire to become a preacher. My parents knew that, and they wanted to put me and my sister and brother in a Christian school, and so we moved to Florence, Alabama. And my last 2 years of high school were at Mars Hill Bible School, all due to the influence of Paul Simon. I have a cherished little New Testament that Brother Simon gave me when I graduated from Mars Hill in 1955, and I still have that, with his unusual signature in the front of it. He had extremely good penmanship. I don't know if he studied under A.G. Freed at Freed Hardeman. Brother Freed was a great pensman, but Brother Simon had great penmanship. There were two other preachers in Northwest Florida who had a great influence on me. One was a man by the name of Lewis Casey. Brother Grider was not a Brotherhood known personality. Lewis Casey was not a Brotherhood known personality, but Lewis Casey was a good, simple, down-to-earth Bible preacher. He held a number of meetings in the Panhandle of Florida and South Alabama. He preached regularly for a few years for the church in Florala, Alabama, which is right on the Alabama-Florida line. He held a meeting in my hometown of Defuniak Springs, Florida, and a number of people were baptized during that meeting, and he held other meetings in the area. And Brother Casey's sermons were easy to follow. I could outline them. As a boy, I would sit and listen to him preach, and I would outline his sermons as he went. The other preacher in Northwest Florida that had maybe the greatest influence on me insofar as wanting to preach, and some of my first efforts at preaching coming from material that I got from him, was a man by the name of Willard W. Willis. Brother Willis preached in the town of Luverne, Alabama, about 40 miles south of Montgomery for many years, but he spent a lot of time preaching in meetings. Brother Willis was excellent in the use of charts, and I would copy his charts, and then I would make an outline from those charts, and they became the basis of some of my early preaching. Not the first sermon I ever preached, but some of my early preaching was based on charts and notes that I had taken from sermons by Willard W. Willis. I want to go back to Brother Grider just for a minute. I said he was not a Brotherhood known quality, but when he died, Rex Turner Sr., who was the president of Alabama Christian College, as it was known then, now Faulkner University. Earlier, it was Montgomery Bible College, and it may have still been Montgomery Bible College when Brother Grider died. But Raymond Elliott told me that on the day that Brother Grider died down in South Alabama, Rex Turner announced in chapel at Alabama Christian College, "A great man has died in South Alabama today." That's the esteem that this Brother Grider had. Willard Willis died in a tragic head-on automobile collision, and he was teaching at Alabama Christian at the time that he died. Willard Willis was an extremely intelligent man, and yet a very down-to-earth, basic, fundamental gospel preacher. Those four men from my early boyhood days had a great influence on me. After we moved to Florence, Alabama, I became good friends with a boy my age by the name of Wayne Emmons. Wayne's dad was A.E. Emmons Jr., and at that time he was preaching for the East Side Church in Sheffield. Through my friendship with Wayne, I got to know Brother Emmons, and not so much in my preaching content, but just his overall demeanor. He had a great sense of humor. Brother Emmons had an influence on me, and I remember spending several delightful evenings visiting with Wayne in their home, and Brother Emmons had his study at home, and he and Wayne and I would go back to his study, and he'd pull out his sermon outline notebooks, and I saw how he outlined his sermons.
Wow.
And that had an influence on how I outlined my sermons.
Wow.
I had a speech and debate teacher at Mars Hill by the name of Charles Draper. Brother Draper also was a preacher. He did not influence me so much in my preaching as he did as a speech teacher, a debate coach, and an encourager to me. And he was likable, personable. He was a very popular and one of the favorite teachers of us. At Freed-Hardeman College, it was then, still a 2-year school when I attended with a third-year Bible program. I was influenced by H.A. Dixon, who was the president of the school. Brother Dixon taught, we were on the quarter basis in those days, and in 3 successive quarters of the school year, he would teach Romans, Hebrews, and Revelation. I never did take his Revelation course. I had Romans and Hebrews under him. I had Christian Evidences under him. I had a course called Special Bible at that time, which really just dealt with issues that preachers would face in local work. Mm-hmm. Brother Dixon was a principal preacher, and he had been a local minister for several years before he became president of Freed-Hardeman. He was called from the Poplar Street Church in Florence, which later became the Wood Avenue Church in Florence, to come to Henderson to succeed N.B. Hardeman as the president of Freed-Hardeman. Mm-hmm. G.K. Wallace came to Freed-Hardeman to teach while I was there, and I had several courses under him. Brother Wallace had a great influence on me. He came to Carnes in Knoxville, where I was preaching. He and Sister Wallace held a Sunday through Sunday meeting for us, stayed in our home, he and Sister Wallace. We had a great time. I remember one day we sat aside to just study. And I've got a Bible that I've got charts and notes in that came from Brother Wallace and me spending a day studying some of the issues that were facing the church at that time. Church cooperation, church support of orphans' homes, and things of that kind. Mm-hmm. This was late 50s, early 60s. Frank Van Dyke, head of the Bible department at Freed-Hardeman, was a great influence, not so much as to preaching style, but just his teaching, his scholarship. Some of us thought of him as another J.W. McGarvey. Wow. And Brother Van Dyke taught Introduction to the Old Testament, Introduction to the New Testament. I had both of those courses. The Holy Spirit, Bible geography. Just a masterful teacher. He had a great sense of humor. He was paralyzed as a result of, I think, polio. I'm not sure if it was polio in his right side. And so he wrote with his left hand. Maybe he was naturally left-handed, or he learned to write with his left hand. He was always dressed immaculately. He was not a tall man, about 5'4", maybe. And sometimes we would pull tricks on him. We would get the chairs in the room before he got there, and we would just scramble them up, get them all out of order. Well, he could not stand that. And he would come in, and he would take a look around and sort of frown a little bit. Boys, let's get these chairs, these desks lined up the way they're supposed to be. W. Claude Hall did not influence me as a preacher, other than he had a class that was taken mainly by preachers that was called Spoken English. And you learned how to speak in that class. And that doesn't mean that everything he taught took with me. But I know I know proper speech, proper pronunciation. It is not baptism, it is baptism. It is not Jerusalem, it's Jerusalem. It's not Corinth, let me see. It's not Corinthians. It's not First Corinthians, K-E-R, it's First Corinthians. Those are a few of the things that he emphasized. It's not water, it's water. And his tests were out of this world. They could be humorous, they could be funny. Part of the tests were oral, and part of the tests were writing. He had an influence on me, though, so those are some of the men. And then after I left school and started local work, I've been privileged to preach in places where we've had some great men to come and hold meetings. And they've all had an influence in one way or another on me. And I've been privileged through the years to get to know a lot of the preachers in the Brotherhood. We've had B.C. Goodpasture and Foy Wallace Jr., Earl West, Robert Brewer, whose middle name is Larimore, Robert Larimore Brewer, for meetings where I've held. Other men that were great preachers: William C. Hatcher, Bill Hatcher, Bobby Duncan. These are all men who've held meetings where I've preached. Willard Collins, Jim Bill McIntyre. Just all really fine men. Tom Holland. I can't sit here and think of all of them off the top of my head. These are just names that come to mind. Bob Brewer preached in Clarksville, Tennessee. He had preached in Memphis previously, and he moved to Clarksville and preached there. And when he moved back to Memphis to a different congregation, he recommended me for the work at Clarksville, and I followed him there. Another man we had for a meeting was a man by the name of Paul Matthews, who lived in Murray, Kentucky at the time. And Paul Matthews was a wonderful preacher. He was a nephew by marriage to E.R. Harper. And when Brother Matthews died in Shelbyville, Tennessee, I was fortunate enough to follow him in the work at the Fairlane Church in Shelbyville. So I've just known a host of preachers through the years, and I've sometimes said I love the brotherhood, but I also love the preacherhood. I love preachers. I love to be around preachers. I learn from preachers. I'm still learning from preachers. And I just enjoy being in the company of good, faithful gospel preachers. They're all different. They have different talents and abilities. I think of a man like Willard Collins, booming voice, very basic, simple, fundamental sermons, compared to a man like Foy Wallace Jr., for example, or even B.C. Goodpasture. But every one of these men, in their own way, have had an influence on me. Jim Bill McIntyre was blessed with a silver tongue. He was a silver-tongued orator. He had a way with words. Guy Woods. Brother Woods never held a meeting where I preached. Gus Nichols never held a meeting where I preached. But I love those men, and I learned from them. I read after them, as we say. I'll tell you, if a young preacher today would get a volume of Gus Nichols' sermon outlines and just read through them, they'd get a good education.
Yeah, definitely.
They'd get a good education. And in a lot of instances, a needed education. I wish young preachers would read Gus Nichols and Guy Woods and Foy Wallace Jr. and a host of others.
Yeah. There's been a huge transition, hasn't there, where so much of that material is out of print, sadly. A lot of it is. And, the word is, so many of the young Bible majors, that's not what they're reading.
No.
They're not studying those things. They're not being introduced to those things even.
I try to maintain a positive and optimistic spirit. I want to be a positive and optimistic person. But there are young preachers that bother me. There are older preachers that bother me because I know of some older preachers who have changed. They do not have the convictions that they once had. And I realize that there are denominational preachers who are scholars. And I'm not saying that we should not read the denominational scholars. But I've got a pretty simple rule, and it may be naive, but when a man cannot grasp the significance of the undenominational nature of the church, when he cannot grasp the biblical action of baptism, immersion, and its divine purpose in order to the remission of sins, I have a lot of trouble depending a great deal on what else he might say on other subjects. If he can't grasp something as simple and as basic as that, and I'm not putting down denominational scholarship, but I'm afraid that too many of our young preachers are reading after the denominational scholars. And they're not reading the material of Gus Nichols and Guy Woods and Foy Wallace Jr. N.B. Hardeman. I wish they would read the 5 volumes of the Tabernacle Sermons of N.B. Hardeman. They would get a college education. They'd get a year of college by reading those 5 volumes. And I don't know if our Christian colleges and preacher schools are emphasizing this as they should.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know.
I
know that some of our schools, in my judgment, have apostatized. I'll be blunt about that. And even the best ones among us, as Brother F.B. Strigley one time said, they need to be watched. Even the best ones among us, the best schools among us, they need to be watched because the danger is still there.
That's a great point. Connected with that, and so, so many, that's needed in the church, is getting back to, in addition to the Bible, obviously studying good things that have been so profitable and sound doctrine. What else would you think what else do you think is needed in the church today?
We need, obviously, first of all, love for the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. We need to seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, the kingdom of God and His righteousness. From the standpoint of preaching and teaching, we need to get back to Bible preaching. We need to teach the fundamentals of the faith. I sometimes ask, how long has it been, if I'm talking to preachers, how long has it been since you preached on, and I've got a list of subjects that I think need to be preached. If I'm talking to others, I might ask, how long has it been since you have heard a sermon on? And I've got that same list. We need to talk about the authority in religion, handling aright the word of truth, the pattern in the New Testament. We have brethren today who are denying that there is a pattern. We need to emphasize why baptism is for the remission of sins. We need to talk about the establishment of the church. How long has it been since we've heard a sermon on the establishment of the church, the identity of the church, the worship of the church, the work of the church? Those used to be staples that were preached. Why we do not use instrumental music. Why we observe the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week. Those used to be staples that were preached. And our young people grew up hearing them. And we knew why we did not use instrumental music. And we knew why we did not have women preachers. And why we did not have women elders. But we don't have that emphasis today, and I think we have to get back to it. I'm not talking about preaching that exclusively.
Right.
I'm not talking about a steady diet of that. But we cannot neglect it. We must not neglect it. We need lessons on Christian living, morality, and the challenges that we face today from the world.
That's excellent points, excellent advice. And I know looking at a lot of old meeting lists when they used to have, 2-week, 3-week meetings, and you look at the topics, and all those topics you just mentioned would be intermingled.
Exactly.
With all those topics, a good balance.
Yes.
But it was reminded in every meeting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And no doubt in the local works it was going on.
I remember G.K. Wallace saying that when he was in local work, and I'm not quoting him verbatim, but I'm giving you the gist of what he said, that you need to cycle through these basic fundamental themes every 2 to 3 years. Just start back over. You have a different audience 2 or 3 years later. And if you have people who heard it before, they need to hear it again. Authority and religion. The Lord's Supper. Why we don't use instrumental music. The organization of the church, elders, deacons, members, and the qualifications of elders. When you read the qualifications of elders, there's no room for a woman to be in there.
No, not at all. And as you said, the new members and the young members, right? The young kids growing up
absolutely.
In the congregation.
Brother Wallace one time said, you're tired of hearing about Philip and the eunuch. He said, you may be tired of it, but you're not through with it. You're not through hearing about it. As long as he preached, he was going to preach on the cases of conversion. How long has it been since we've heard a sermon on one of the cases of conversion in the book of Acts?
It's a great question. Great thought. A number of years ago, we were in a work, and I had introduced an issue of the spiritual sword. It was all on morality, and we were going to study that. That was the plan for a quarter. And one of the elders said they looked over the list, and all the different moral issues were listed in that at that point. And he said, well, we don't have a problem with any of these. Why should we teach on this? That's a problem, isn't it?
That's a problem, right?
That's a major problem.
Yeah.
We know if we don't address it, it's going to come in. Exactly. It's going to be in people's lives continually. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to shift the gears just a moment or two and talk about you've been a prolific writer and an excellent writer. And I wanted you to maybe touch upon what writing you did over the years as you worked in local work, and maybe when you began to take that seriously, and then lead us up to when Brother Goodpasture asked you to be a staff writer for the Gospel Advocate.
The first article that was ever published in a Brotherhood paper was when I was just starting my 3rd year at Freed Hardeman. I had been getting a paper out of Fort Worth, Texas called The Vindicator that was edited by E.C. Fuqua at that time. No. Brother Fuqua had passed away. Dillard Thurman. Brother Fuqua had started the paper, and then he had gotten old, and he sold it or turned it over to a man in Fort Worth by the name of Dillard W. Thurman. I believe W was his middle name. Mm-hmm. And Brother Thurman was editor of the Vindicator, and also another paper that was not as widely distributed, I don't think, at that time as the Vindicator, but and I can't remember if it was a weekly or a monthly at that time, but it was called Gospel Minutes. Mm-hmm. It later became a very popular publication, and a lot of churches ordered bundles of it and put it in the vestibules near the tract racks and places like that. Anyhow, I began attempting to do some writing, and I sent it to Brother Thurman, and he published it in Gospel Minutes. So I had, and I continued to write for a while, and he would be kind enough to publish my articles in that publication. From time to time, I would submit an article to the Gospel Advocate, but I can remember submitting some articles, and they never saw the light of print. I don't know if Brother Goodpasture saw them, or if he saw them and thought, well, I don't think that's worthy of being published in the Gospel Advocate. But I did not let that deter me. When I was living in Clarksville, I remember getting a letter from Brother Goodpasture. At that time, the Advocate would run an article in the weekly. The Advocate was a weekly at that time. An article about that week's Bible school lesson from the Advocate Quarterly, and he asked me, he invited me to write one of the articles for the Advocate lesson in the Gospel Advocate publication, the paper. And from time to time, I would submit an article, and he would publish it. And I was living in Mobile, Alabama, and he came for a meeting, and I was totally shocked and surprised by what he said to me while he was there. He said, Brother Hugh, Brother Fulford, I want to invite... I was so much younger than he, but he always called me Brother Fulford. He was a dignified man. He had respect for preachers of all ages. And I remember I was uncomfortable with him calling me Brother Fulford. I wished he would just call me Hugh. Yeah. But he said, Brother Fulford, I want to invite you to become a staff writer for the Gospel Advocate. Well, I was shocked by that, and of course honored by it, flattered by it, and accepted it. And that was in 1973. And so that's when I began writing for the Advocate, and I became rather committed to that and submitted articles regularly to the Advocate. And Brother Goodpasture lived 4 more years after that. He died in early 77. And Ira North eventually succeeded him as the editor of the Advocate. J. Roy Vaughn was the interim editor. And Ira sent out a letter to all of the staff writers saying that he was not going to have a staff of writers, but that all of us who had been staff writers were, of course, still free to submit articles. And so I continued to write for the Advocate while Brother North was the editor, and then Brother Woods became the editor, and then Furman Curley. And I think after Furman, Neil Anderson, who had bought the Advocate and owned it, became the editor. And all of these men were nice enough to continue to publish articles that I would submit to them. And then about 10 or 12 years ago, after I had retired from full-time work, I was preaching part-time, but I still had time on my hands, and I wanted to have some sort of personal medium. And I wanted to use some of the technology. I am a tech illiterate, but I do know how to compose and send out emails. So I came up with this catchy title of Hugh's News and Views. And so I write a weekly column called Hugh's News and Views that I send out each week when I'm at home. I don't try to send it out when I'm out of town. It won't go out this week. But, and I intended for it to not be strictly a religious column, that from time to time I might deal with very personal matters, or I might deal with sports or entertainment or recreation or family matters. And I've done that occasionally. But by and large, it's a religious biblical message addressing some topic, some subject, some issue that I think needs to be addressed. It's funny to me that people have such a trouble remembering the name of it. I thought Hugh's News and Views would be easy to remember.
That's catchy.
I got a request yesterday. Could I please subscribe to your Hughes and News? Hughes and News.
They're getting in the ballpark.
They're in the ballpark. I know what they're talking about. But I do enjoy writing, and I've got a list on my desk right now at home of subjects that I want to talk about.
That's great. Yeah.
I've got more material to write about than I can get to probably, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. I sometimes I will venture into the political world. I'll take a political viewpoint and I will write about it. And when somebody writes back and disagrees with me, I've got a stock answer.
Yeah.
Look at the title of this column: Hugh's News and Views.
That's a great point. Yeah.
This is how I feel about it.
It's your thoughts.
It's my thought. Now, if you want to write James's News and Views or Steve's News and Views, just have at it. But this is Hugh's News and Views.
That's right.
And
great point.
I've gotten into some exchanges with some brethren who've taken issue with me. And I will go with them for a while. After a while, I may have to just cut it off and say, well, we're obviously on different pages on this matter. We're going to have to agree to disagree. And move on. I don't intend to get sidetracked and waste a lot of time with things like that, because even though I am retired, I'm staying busy. Right. And so.
Well, you've written for a long time for the Spiritual Sword and done a wonderful job there too.
Yes, Alan Hires and I have been friends since our college days. And I have sometimes joked with Alan that when we left school, we agreed with each other. I said to Alan, if you will not tell any lies about me, I will not tell the truth about you. And several years ago, Alan asked me to begin writing for the Spiritual Sword. And so the Advocate, of course, is no longer being published, and I don't know if it will ever come back into existence. So my chief outlet for writing now, brotherhood-wide, is through the Spiritual Sword. But I've enjoyed writing for the Spiritual Sword, and Alan has been a true friend through all the years and has honored me with the privilege of writing for the Spiritual Sword, and I do enjoy that very much. It's a good publication. I'm told it's the most widely read teaching publication in the Brotherhood.
That's good to know, yeah.
It goes all over the world, and I think it's doing a world of good.
I believe you're right. Yeah, I think it's a powerful force today.
It
has been.
It has
in its whole history.
In its whole history, it's been a powerful force, And I suppose we could say that it is not more needed than it is today.
Yes, yes. Well, I want to get your opinion on one more question, and I appreciate your time today.
I'm glad to be here.
So thankful for this. What is your response to the attitude that says we should bury our head in the sand when it comes to what is happening in the church and just preach the gospel?
Well, I don't see how we can preach the gospel and bury our heads in the sand. The gospel consists of many facets. Of course, in its limited sense, we know what the gospel is, but I think the word gospel is used in the scriptures in a broad sense to include the faith as a whole. Mm-hmm. God's complete revelation to mankind through Jesus Christ. And the gospel touches on false teaching. Mm-hmm. It discusses immoral practices. I don't see how we can preach the gospel and ignore the sexual perversion, the gay pride, mm-hmm. the transgenderism that is taking place in our society today. Mm-hmm. I don't see how we can preach the gospel and ignore the liberalism, the whatever we want to call it, that's taking place in some quarters in the church. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand. I don't see how we cannot preach the New Testament and ignore those matters. Mm-hmm. Now, should we preach against something all the time and never for something? No, I'm not for that. I think we have to have balance. Mm-hmm. People come to the worship assembly on Sunday, and they need to be taught the fundamentals, and we need to have fundamental gospel preaching at those during some of those services. But people need encouragement. They need mm-hmm. comfort. They need instruction in Christian living. They need to know about the life of Christ and mm-hmm. how he lived and what he taught and the principles that he taught. We need to learn how to be loving and kind and generous. We need to know how to rear our families, train our children, treat our wives and our husbands. We need teaching on marriage and divorce and remarriage and the evils of divorce. And the only acceptable reason that there is for a divorce and a second marriage. We need to preach the whole counsel of God. Mm-hmm. That's
a key phrase there.
That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And the gospel, in its broad sense, is the whole counsel of God. It's mm-hmm. the entirety of the faith once for all delivered to the saints. Mm-hmm. So I don't see how we could ignore these things. Now, I don't think we need to turn the church or the pulpit into a political platform. I don't think we need to promote a political party in the church. But we need to deal with principles that impact moral living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Again, thank you so much for your time. You've been a tremendous influence on me in my work and over the years, and through your writings, through your friendship. I always enjoy spending time with you.
It's great to be with you, Steve. Love you and appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.